Hello, can you hear me? Oops.
This one's dead too. Maybe later.
Thank you so much for coming here. It's so wonderful to have a live beyond Zoom. And I'm delighted to be here with these two very illustrious gentlemen who need no introduction. Mr. Yashwant Sinha knew Mr. Vajpayee very well. He worked with him. He was also a friend. Mr. Shashi Tharoor is a devoted parliamentarian, a three-term parliamentarian, and someone who really is devoted to the norms and practices of parliament, just as Vajpayee ji was. I'll start this session by, because Vajpayee always wrote a lot of poetry, and I'll start this session by quoting some lines that he said when he was in Pakistan. This is not his poem, but these are the lines he quoted in his 1999 trip to Pakistan. तुम आओ गुलशन ए लाहौर से चमन बरदोश, हम आए सुबह ए बनारस की रोशनी लेकर, हिमालय की हवाओं की ताजगी लेकर, फिर उसके बाद ये पूछे कि कौन दुश्मन है. And I think this is a wonderful line to encapsulate Vajpayee, because he was a man without a dushman. He was what is called the Ajat Shatru, the man without enemies. And he practiced a politics where there was ideological combat, there was ideological contestation, there were adversaries on opposite sides of the aisle, but there was no enmity, there was no dushmani. And I think that's what I discovered through the course of this book, that here's a character who's so different from our present times, who cannot easily be pigeonholed into this box or that box. He's inconvenient, but he's real. Mr. Yashwant Sinha, the kind of politics we have today, in the era of Moditwa, in the era of the overwhelming majority that the BJP enjoys, is also the politics of an us and them, and of of the Khan Market gang, or Deshdrohis, or Bhakts and Kambakts, and anti-nationals and uber nationalists. How comfortable would Vajpayee be in this kind of a deeply polarized public life?
Thank you, Sagarika. I'm audible? First of all, congratulations for this very well-researched book. I really enjoyed going through it because it's like, like contemporary events unfolding in a way in which you've been a participant. To answer your question, I'll say that Vajpayee would have been deeply disturbed, would have been deeply upset at what is happening in our country today. This was not his line. He started his career with the RSS. You quoted him at various places, how he vouched for Hindutva in the early part of his career. But I think what you bring out very well in this book is a great difference between what a politician, a person in public life, says when he is not in office and the way he behaves when he is in office. And that, I think, is the mantra. We know of many examples where people's behavior pattern has changed. In office, they have done things which they were loath to do earlier. And Vajpayee is a very good example. I mean, to get Mr. L.K. Advani to talk to the Hurriyat was no mean achievement. It happened at the end of his tenure, and after that we lost power. But if he had continued, that clearly indicates the line he would have taken. Now, is it even imaginable that anything of that kind can take place in the present regime? So there is a world of difference between the government that Vajpayee ran and a government which is in office today.
Right. And you know, as Mr. Yashwant Sinha said, that he, when in office, Vajpayee was not an ideologue. Is that very important? Because after all, you know, when you're the government, you are the government of all of India. You're the Prime Minister of all of India, and that's what he was. So is that, I mean, do you find that missing today? That the government, and I know that, you know, you did praise Mr. Narendra Modi recently in a tweet, and that got you a lot of flack. Mr. Tharoor is always, you know, getting it from left to right.
I praised his energy and drive,
Yeah.
which I think is uncontestable, but nothing else.
But do you lament this divide, this
Yeah,
sort of you know, enmity?
And in fact, I would slightly differ from my respected friend Yashwant Sahab, because I think that even in opposition, Vajpayee showed a lot of signs of reaching across. In fact, his famous speech when Nehru passed away
Yes.
doesn't read like a speech of an RSS or Hindutva acolyte. It's an amazingly generous, admiring, almost reverential speech, lamenting the passing of Nehru and talking about how essentially we would continue to live in his shadow and work in his shadow and so on. So I would say that even in opposition, Vajpayee had this capacity to speak of the other side with affection, to fraternize with the other side, which I'm sure Yashwant Sahab saw a lot
And you
of.
miss that today.
And yes, and there was a famous episode when he became foreign minister.
Yes.
When when he became
Foreign minister.
Foreign minister, when
Yes,
the
the
painting,
portrait.
the portrait of Nehru was missing from the foreign minister's office, and he asked what happened to it, and they said, well, we thought you wouldn't want it here, and he said, bring it back immediately. And that kind of gesture suggests precisely the kind of person he was. We don't have that now, and you could argue, and some would, that perhaps Vajpayee was also conditioned by the fact that in office he never had an absolute majority.
Right.
He headed a coalition of, I think, 23 parties, of which only one, the Shiv Sena, actually had a Hindutva ideology.
Right.
Everybody else didn't.
Right.
And he had to get along with them, otherwise you wouldn't have a government.
Right.
So you could argue that there was a certain level of expediency also in his approach. But like Yashwant Sahab, I should have begun by congratulating you on this book. It's fluently written, very readable, full of anecdotes and quotes, and really marvelous. I just want to
Thanks
register
a lot.
that praise before we get too
Thanks
much
so
into
much.
the subject.
Thanks so much. But you know, having said that Vajpayee, in office did not operate according to ideology, would you say that there were times when he did fail the test of constitutional democracy? For example, when he made the kind of speeches that he did, say in 1970, when he said, "Ab Hindu maar nahi khayega," after the Bhiwandi riots. When he said in 1992, "Kam se kam Vedi to banegi," about just before the Babri Masjid was demolished. His failure to act against the Gujarat government. I mean, I know that you've spoken to me during the course of the book. I interviewed you and you spoke at length about Vajpayee's failure in dismissing a Gujarat government which was accused of riots. Do you feel that there are also instances which we must register that Vajpayee did fail the test of democracy and parliamentary democracy which he held so dear?
I'll go back to what Sashi was saying a little while ago. The fact that he spent a lot of time in the Parliament of India, in both houses. And he had great respect for the Parliament of India. I recall an incident. The Americans had gone into Iraq, and Sashi's party was disrupting the house for days on end.
It wasn't my party yet. I wasn't there. But anyway, yeah.
And they were demanding that the Parliament of India should adopt a resolution.
Right.
I was the External Affairs Minister, and I went back to the days when the Russians, the Soviets, let's say, had gone into Czechoslovakia. And how Mrs. Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister then, 1968, resisted any attempt for the Parliament of India to adopt a resolution against the Russians, against the Soviets. But Parliament was getting disrupted, we were not reaching anywhere. So Vajpayee called me and the Minister for Parliamentary